Welcome back. It's now 2026. This is James Black at the Canadian Securities Exchange, and I am joined today by Thomas Caldwell, the chairman of Urbana Corporation, a listed company on the CSE. Thomas, thanks for joining us today for our 2026 economic outlook. A lot to get started on, but just to begin, very quickly, tell the people a little bit about yourself and your firm.
Well, I've been in the investment business since 1965, so you can do the math. Urbana Corporation is a very neat company. We invest both in public companies and private equity. Private equity, we get companies that are changing industries, if you will, and both of them have been extremely profitable, both the publicly traded securities that we invest in, generally big caps, out of season type of thing. And but in the private equity is kind of interesting because you're investing in people. And I like to think I get better as I get older at judging people. I still make mistakes, but still, that's been a very, very profitable part of our business. Our business has grown dramatically over the years and the last couple of years as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know just from working with you over the years, I mean, you are a stock picker. You want to go to the companies and see how they're being managed and what their opportunities are, find the disruptors and give them an opportunity with some capital to gain market share and create, great things.
You want to get people that are visionaries, but you have to be a visionary that can execute and make it happen. And that's the secret sauce.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so under the guise of this being an outlook for the year, there's a lot of places we could start the conversation. So just a couple caveats. Our audience is probably curious about the Canadian story in 2026 and particularly the markets. But I think we got to look at one of the overarching themes, which is U.S. influence on the global scale. I think that was really how the year ended in 2025. That's what was capturing headlines, and it's bleeding into the market. So maybe just tell us from your perspective as an investor, how you are processing what has happened at the end of 2025 with the U.S. agenda in Venezuela and possibly elsewhere globally. How is that impacting the markets and how you look at 2026 going forward?
Well, clearly, President Trump is really going extraterritorial. He's got bigger agendas, the Greenland, of course, being one of them. And everything's covered under the guise of national security, which is actually an old Stalinist phrase, believe it or not. If I look into next year, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Canada is on the agenda. We're on the menu, make no mistake. And it's going to come in the guise that we can't defend ourselves in the Arctic, national security, etc. It doesn't matter what the reason is. It'll be embellished such that he does have an agenda vis-a-vis Canada. He began with the testing phrase of the 51st state, etc. I don't think that's off the table. I think his megalomania includes us. Now, he's not going to invade Canada. I don't think that's going to happen. That's so far off the rails, even for him. But what he might do is try to make our lives so miserable that becoming part of America becomes more attractive. Let me give you an example. Venezuelan oil can replace Canadian oil in many of the refineries on the Gulf Coast. If he puts the squeeze on us to debase our country, our economy, etc., then I think Canadians might be more open to doing some kind of a deal. And I think the test case for that is the free trade talks around the USMCA agreements that are coming up in March, April, May. If those go smoothly, then I think things will be fine. If he is very intransigent or doesn't even want to meet or doesn't really, he starts to beat us up on that, then that original agenda, having Canada on the menu, comes into play. So that will be a critical factor as I look in Canada going forward. Canadian stock market has been very strong, and so as is the U.S. But the U.S. is strong for a different reason. Their economy is doing extremely well. You're getting economic growth. You're getting good earnings. You're getting low unemployment. And so the market there is reflective of what's happening. In Canada, it's not reflective of what's really happening in the economy. Our stock market reflects, first off, the banks, who are a protected species within Canada, and then basically the resource industry, particularly the mining and golds, et cetera. So, but that's disconnected from the real economy here. Our real economy, people ask me, are we going into a recession? And to which I say, no, we're not. We are in a recession right now. And youth unemployment is off the Richter scale. So in Canada, the resources are bailing us out along with our financials. We've got lots of projects, big projects on the books, the Ring of Fire, pipelines, et cetera, but they've been on the books for 30 years. LNG, all of this stuff. And it's still going to be 5 years or so before it make a difference. To really get our economy going, we have to have a government that has to consider cutting taxes, cutting regulations, that sort of thing. Canada can be really the place to be invested, I think, in the future. But we've got to clean up our act and even get it halfway right before we mobilize Canadians to go and do stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously, you've touched on some items that demonstrate what Canada is good at. And I believe that to assert our own independence globally, we're going to have to be even better at running these institutions financially and also in the resource sector. Any further thoughts on things that Canada can do economically to assert its independence, to be more self-dependent and not be under the influence of the US as much? And is there anything we can do here as market operators to help push that agenda forward?
Well, it's interesting. As you know, I invest in exchanges, and we were once the largest owner of the New York Stock Exchange, ourselves and our clients, and the Chicago board before they went by. And we, as you know, we're a significant shareholder of the CSE. The CSE is really a neat exchange in my mind, because the job of an exchange, the real job, is to take ideas and match it with people's money to get an economy growing. Many of the major exchanges now are more like gaming institutions. They have so many derivative products. They really don't funnel directly into the economy as does, say, a CSE. And I think we have to do more of that. I mean, if we look at one of our big competitors here in Canada, in 2024, they had one new issue. And 2023, they also had one new issue, which 6 employees of that company. So that's not economic growth. So there's lots of things we can do at the regulatory level. I think regulators have to think about the health of capital markets, which frankly don't exist in Canada, and regulations at every level, every industry, and taxes. Those are what we can do domestically. Internationally, I think Mr. Carney, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt here. He's running around the world and signing memorandums of understanding and trying to reestablish our name. Sooner or later, he's got to come home and start to do some real stuff here. And hopefully that'll come, I think, in the next little while. The pivotal moment, as I said, though, is watch this free trade agreement. And that's going to tell us about Canada. And I'm not letting companies off the hook, management off the hook. I've roamed the world, as you know. I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East and India, et cetera. And I never run into Canadian companies trying to do business there. Canadian corporate managers very often think like branch plant managers. Well, we are. We're a branch plant country, if you will. Why aren't Canadian companies the dominant in the markets? Like an Anglo-American or a BHP Billiton, et cetera. We're the takeover E's. We should be the takeover O's. So I would also challenge Canadian corporate management to think bigger, to dream bigger, to think world scale, because we've been on this narcotic of the U.S. market being easy to export into, and we got lazy. And now all of a sudden, our big customer has turned out to be quite unreliable. So we're going to have to think bigger, work harder, and look at better markets and be more adventurous. And that's corporate management as well.
Yeah, you mentioned capital formation in a bit of a sidebar question, but does Canada have the current tools to attract the big dollars to put into these companies to help domestically grow them? Because we often see companies, when they get to a certain stage, they go southbound to raise the capital and possibly list on other exchanges, or they go global in other cases and go to Europe or maybe the UK. So any thoughts on how we can continue to promote more capital formation in Canada as these companies get bigger? And,
well, James, you're absolutely right. Canada is a wonderful country in which to start a business. It is not a wonderful country to build a business because, frankly, we've debased our capital markets. And there's a bigger picture. We've debased our history. We've debased our confidence in ourselves, our pride. So it's a way bigger picture. But I do think that if we want to start here, Canada could be a tremendous destination for world capital. There's so much, like we've fallen behind for 10 years now. We're behind the curve in terms of growth. We're in competition with other countries, believe it or not. And what you can do to start it, as I've said earlier in our chat here, regulation and taxes have to be cut. Encourage entrepreneurs. That's where your growth comes from. I mean, the big companies that we all trade now didn't exist 40 years ago. And the big companies we did trade don't exist now. And that's entrepreneurial activity. We do not encourage, recognize, or celebrate the entrepreneur the way America does. And they're reaping the benefits from it, and we're reaping the lack of benefits from that. So I think that's very, very important that governments have to think in these terms. But also foreign investors are looking at Canada and say, wait a minute, your big pensions, your big institutions, they don't invest in Canada. Why should we? I mean, that's obvious. It's so blatant. So create the host environment that makes sense for businesses to grow, to innovate, and to become better and bigger. And that's the job of governments. And we failed at that. Governments have failed at that.
Right. And obviously our line of collaboration is through the stock exchange. And that's an interesting tool. Obviously companies decide to use it. Some don't. And there's a lot of reasons why some do and some don't. One of the reasons they do go public is obviously the cost of capital proposition is often much better publicly than it would be private. But there are a lot of challengers, I should say, to the public listing model, both in the form of venture capital and digital securities, tokenization. Remind us and the viewers why the public stock exchange model still matters. Even though the market's doing well, it's one indication of health. Why does the model still work, and why is it going to continue to work in the face of all these challenger funding sources?
Well, it's been challenging for a while because the regulations are such, and the cost of going to the public market has been so immense. You stay private longer. You rely on private capital, which was quite easy to get a hold of. So frankly, you had to be bigger before going public. Public markets are critically important to the free enterprise system, period. When we were investing in exchanges around the world, one of the statistics that came out was the market capitalization of your public companies, comparing that to the gross domestic product of your country. If that number of public companies was way smaller than the gross domestic product, you really had very unstable governments. You had high crime. You had people not invested in the economy. And it meant also that your economy was dominated by wealthy families. Mexico, Central America, all of this, where the market cap of public companies was lower than what was out there. The beauty with public markets is it allows everybody to participate in the dream, in the new ideas, in the new possibilities. That's so important because that's where the middle class can become part of, can invest in their own country. And if you don't have that, you have rich and poor, and that's it. And you can take a look at Central and South America, and that's exactly what you got when you do not have public markets. I don't think it sounds complex and rather arcane, but governments don't get this. This is critically important. And as you know, governments have been very hostile to new enterprise in this country, very much so over the years. We've seen it. You've seen it. We've all seen it. And as if they don't care. And maybe it's because the larger financial institutions control the regulatory agenda. There can be all kinds of reasons for it. But public ownership gives me a chance with my little money to participate in the new idea, whether it be this Apple computer thing that's starting umpteen years back or whatever. That's why America understands this, that I can participate in a dreamer's idea. A guy that's really brilliant can start a new idea. And I'll give you a good example. Toronto, we're sitting in Toronto. Within a couple of miles of our offices is the genesis of artificial intelligence. Jeffrey Hinton at U of T. He's the godfather of AI. All the senior guys in that area still talk to Hinton. How many AI companies are there in Canada? Zero to speak of. That were totally dedicated to that. And the billions being poured into that in the United States. And it's because we have not nurtured that entrepreneurial environment that we need in the public companies. But I can participate in that in the United States, cannot participate in Canada. And sooner or later, somebody in government's got to say, hey, we have to have a better host environment. But that's the importance of public markets.
Yeah, I think one of the largest AI companies in the world, OpenAI, is still classified and organized as a charity. I could be wrong, but I think that's where that's at. And I assume they're going to go access the market at some point. But maybe on that thread, looking ahead to the year, any themes or any indicators that we can share now or see now that are going to inform investment decisions today? Maybe something that you mentioned, AI. Obviously, it's not going to go away in 2026. But anything around whether it's sector, geography that maybe leads us down a path of thinking?
Well, first off, let's look at the determining factor. Usually the determining factor is interest rates. Now, they are coming lower, and that'll provide a decent boost to market. Not so much in Canada, because if people don't have confidence, they're not going to borrow, and it's pushing on a strain. But in the United States, interest rates are declining. But the real determining factor now, like it or not, I hate to say it, is President Trump, which means going into next year, we're going to have a mercurial background influence on everything. Whatever his new vision is when he gets up tomorrow morning, we don't know what that's going to be. That means you're going to have a volatile market going forward. I still think the trend is going to be up because governments are beginning to realize they got to think and do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And in Canada, it doesn't matter how bad Mr. Carney is, he's got to be an awful lot better than what we've experienced over the last decade for Pete. So that's an improvement. But you're going to have volatility. As an investment manager running Urbana and other companies, I like volatility. That's where I make money. And I love negativity and I love crisis because that's where I get the bargains. And the beauty is the laws of economics don't change. Sooner or later, everybody acts in their own best interest, whereas political influence does change. So you might have a negative political influence in Mr. Trump or incompetent governments or whatever, but eventually they will change and the laws of economics will pull in. So I kind of like adversity. That's where I get the bargains. And Mr. Trump is going to create bargains for me. But underneath that volatile environment, I still think you're going to have an upward trend in markets in the US. And hopefully, if we do a few things right in Canada, we'll also have that trend here.
Yeah. And last question, just because I think we experience it at the exchange and is a trend that I see influencing the market is passive investment products or exchange traded funds and products of that ilk. Are we entering an era where that's now the main investment vehicle in the public market and we just have to live with it? Or are we just experiencing a momentary trend and things will come back to stock picking and being able to choose particular companies to put in a portfolio and return back to us some value?
The answer is yes to both. I think, first off, we're not index investors. We pick our shots within a market. And if I look at Urbana's investment performance, it's beat the index over the last 23 years by 50% per year annually compounded. I mean, that's fact. This is published, that's audit, that's fact. So it does work. It can work. The challenge, I think, with a lot of the exchange traded funds, and we're an investor in a company that also manufactures exchange traded products, but you have almost like an inverted pyramid. And at the bottom of this inverted pyramid are the actual stocks that buy and sell. There are more ETFs in many exchanges than there are stocks. The problem is we've had very good markets for a period of time here. So people like me, we all think we're really smart again. But eventually, I don't know what would cause it, but eventually, if you have a situation where everybody in these stocks run for the door, you're going to have chaos because you're going to have these ETFs being forced to liquidate. They can't wait it out as I can. Yeah. They are forced to liquidate. So there is a point of vulnerability we are introducing to markets. And typically points of vulnerability become real at some point in time. 1 year, 2 years, 10 years from now, they will be. So at the end of the day, I invest money because I bet on the winners. I bet on the companies that look as if they got an advantage, and I bet on the people that can execute. And that's far more important than owning a whole bunch of them.
That's right. You got to get the beta. That's one way to do it. You got to do your own research and you got to be informed and you got to take some risk. And that's really where it all goes. Look, Tom, I think that's a great place to end the conversation for today. I've given our viewers and myself some tools to go into the new year here and try to make sense of all the madness, but also maybe benefit from being participants in the market. Certainly something that we want to encourage here at the exchange. I'm aware of it, and I should share it that, most weeks or every few weeks you put out a show with your colleague Liz Mofsky. It's called Insights, and it's hosted at the Caldwell Securities YouTube page, and it's on social media. Encourage everyone who's watching today, if you want more of Tom's insights throughout the year, tune into that. And Tom, anything else you want to promote or sizzle before we let you go for the day?
I was just going to pick up on your last line. There's money in the madness.
There most certainly is. So maybe on that note, thanks, Tom. We'll wish you a great 2026.
And to you and all the team at the CSE, you're wonderful people. They're absolutely great team, great organization. I'm really proud to be part of it.
Oh, well, we appreciate that. And thank you for your ongoing support.
Thanks, James. All the best.
All the best.